South China Morning Post, 23 September 2023, EU trade leader Valdis Dombrovskis states that the bloc has no intention of publicly severing ties with China. China dominates Europe's supply routes, and Europe finds it challenging to terminate ties with China. China has been informed by the head of the European Commission's trade policy, Valdis Dombrovskis, that the bloc does not plan to sever ties with its biggest trading partner, China, quickly. Decoupling is not the same as de-risking. At the Bund Summit in Shanghai on Saturday, Dombrovskis stated, and the EU has no intention of quickly decoupling from China. This comes ahead of a crucial meeting with Chinese authorities, notably Deputy Premier He Lifeng, in Beijing the following week. To handle trade disputes and take on global concerns like climate change, Dombrovskis promised to strengthen his relationship with China. However, he also emphasized that to preserve the bloc's open strategic autonomy, the EU should minimize its reliance on a select number of strategic products and take appropriate, focused action. When our openness is misused, we have to defend ourselves, Dombrovskis stated. He referenced trade statistics indicating that, of the €865 billion in total trade volume last year, the EU incurred a deficit of nearly €400 billion, $426 billion. Chinese customs officials report that two-way commerce decreased by 7.8% in US dollars in the first 8 months. Beijing and Brussels are navigating a challenging geopolitical environment, and both sides have many complaints and demands. The EU has long lamented the unfair access to the Chinese market and the trade deficit. The Union has also urged Beijing to work together on the Ukraine conflict and climate change. Meanwhile, Beijing requests clarity as Brussels seems more hawkish in aligning with Washington's hostile posture towards China. This has generated worry in China due to the EU's discussion of de-risking. Trade connections, which have long been praised as the foundation for a more extensive partnership, are under more strain due to the EU's most recent investigation into a flood of low-cost Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, entering the continent. China has denounced Brussels' sheer protectionism, implying that when Dombrovskis visits Beijing, EVs will be at the top of the agenda. The European Union claims to have sufficient proof that state subsidies have been offered to Chinese automakers. In his address, Dombrovskis stated that the escalation of geopolitical tensions increases uncertainty for international businesses, leads to more state involvement in the economy, and risks starting subsidy races. In addition, Beijing and Brussels should collaborate to address global concerns, including food security, climate change, and debt distress, according to the EU Trade Commissioner. He Lifeng and Dombrovskis' conversation, according to He Lifeng, a senior fellow at the Chinese think tank Center for China and Globalization, would be essential to calming trade tensions and restoring relations. He is also a former economic and commercial counselor at the Chinese consulates in New York and San Francisco. China and the EU must first determine the major prerequisites for resolving differences through dialogue in the high-level economic and trade dialogues and minimize political interference, he stated. There is a lot of hope that in this environment, we can negotiate on an equal footing to resolve EV trade issues and come to an agreement that considers the interests of both parties, the speaker stated. Sun Yongfu, senior fellow at CCG and former chief of European affairs at the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, stated that this year's trade figures are not that rosy. Therefore, we are altering the allegedly unfair trade. Quite the reverse, EU leaders declared they would launch an anti-subsidy probe into Chinese electric vehicles. Having coordinated trade meetings between senior Chinese and EU leaders, Sun said, "I don't think this is a very healthy signal for Chinese product dumping in the high-level economic and trade dialogue." Even though the EU stated it did not plan to decouple from China, de-risking, according to Sun, would negatively impact Beijing-Brussels cooperation.